Comrade Tony, I'm sorry. He's like, who? I was like, oh, you're Mr. Tony. Never mind. Comrade Orr. He was like, oh, I was like, okay.
What's your number?
254-681-1626.
And many of these workers are child care providers, are cashiers, are health aides, are part of the ALICE population, employed but unable to cover basic living expenses.
She says Arkansas also ranks last in the nation for savings. This story was produced with original reporting from Daniel Green with Little Rock Public Radio.
I told you to send me a
Arkansas News Service. Find out trust indicators
to do this conversation.
This is and I just thought, we pick it up from where we were talking the other day, because it was such an interesting conversation.
Asset limited income constrained employees. College is working families facing high housing costs, medical debt, and more money than
It's
money.
not a link.
We are the majority of our
Do you mind if I help you?
programs that work for us. As hard as we work for our state and families.
Gotcha.
Policymakers and politicians.
It's on the bottom.
It has to be Chrome, it can't be Safari.
Who is
You have Chrome.
ours? All of us.
Download. I broke my phone, so they sent me another one.
Okay, let me see.
Hit the
I
App
should be able
Store.
to find it. I should be able to find it.
No, it's not downloaded. Hit the App Store, because that's what it's going to do.
Oh, okay, it's gonna do all of that.
You there? Right there. Okay.
See it, girl. See, can you?
Okay.
I could do it this way, it might be fast.
I'm learning Arkansas when I sing what they, I'm like, okay, I've never been on this street before. So now when I leave, I gotta go back the way I came so I can go start pointing to the spots I wanna go check out.
I think they can hear us live.
How my memory played tricks on me. I gave her the name. Her name is not Reverend Dr. Love. Her name is Reverend. What's her name? What's her name again?
Denise.
Reverend Denise. Look, because I already gave her name, Dr. Love. I don't even know that. That was just in my head.
Woo! Hey, you heard the music. You heard the music. It's like 9 o'clock, so you know what time it is. It's time for the workplace here on KABF 88.3 FM, Voice of the People Community Radio. I'm your host for the workplace, Toney Orr, and as always, my co-host, the vivacious, fierce Reverend Denise Donnell is in studio today. Good morning, Denise.
Good morning, Grand Rising humans.
Okay, and we also have a guest in the studio today, Miss Katrina Smith, home girl.
Oh, who's Katrina Smith? I told you, Katrina White.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, check me. Okay, so it's been a minute. It seems like it's been a minute since I've been on the air. Been a lot of things going on, but it is great to be back behind the mic. Also, just want to thank everybody who came out for the anniversary last Saturday at St. Michael's Episcopal Church. It was a good event. John Kane was in the house, and Griff was in the house. Denise was in the house. John Cerner.
Your girl Lola, Jesse, also Mr. Henderson and his friend. It was a lot of people there.
It was a lot of people there.
Sam was there.
Yeah, I want to thank the Root Cafe for the food.
Mo was there from Friday Night Gospel Morning.
Yes. It was. It was good. Paul Kelly, who's on the board, he was there. Judge Griffin was there. So it was. Marcus Hunt played for us.
Brian Adams played.
Yeah,
at the very
Brian
beginning.
Brimstone played. So it was. People got.
Cat on the Line played.
People were able to get up and grab the mic and talk about their experiences with KABF and how long they were at KABF. Tim Jones from Collage, he was there. So it was, and I think Gary Butler from the Fix It Show, he was there. And so we just thank everybody who came out, everybody who donated, everybody who put in the time, to come out and visit with us. But we could not have been around for 40 years without you, the listening audience. Just want to thank you because you are the voice of the people and for just showing up and showing out for KABF 88.3 FM. So trying to get some technical things together. Yeah. So do you have any announcements today?
You can go ahead. I'm wondering.
Okay. All right. So our announcements for the day is Arkansas Community Advocates, Trunk and Treat with ACA. Everyone welcome. Wear your costumes, shop our free store, get a free meal, and get some treats. This is going to happen October 27th, 2024, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Everybody is welcome. It's this is going to be held at 2603 Pike Avenue, North Little Rock, in North Little Rock. Hygiene items, clothing, home goods, food, cash app, and give butter. Okay. So early voting has started. It started Monday. I encourage everyone to get out and early vote. One of the great things about early voting, you don't have to worry about going to your precinct. You can go to any early voting site. So early voting for 2024 general election began October 21st and run through November 2nd. You can vote early between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Go to votepulaskiar.gov to search your voting location. Convenient voting sites include D. Brown Library, Roosevelt Thompson Library, William F. Lehman Library, Sidney S. McGrath Library, Jacksonville Community Center, Pulaski County Regional Building, First Christian Church of Sherwood, Hillary Clinton Children's Library, John Gould Fletcher Library, Dolphin Fletcher Terry Library, Dunbar Recreation Center, Jess Oldham's Community Center, and Shorter College. Avoid the long line and cast your vote early. Your voice matters, so let it be heard. Early vote, once again, started October 21st, and it runs through November 2nd from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. at a location near you. Pulaski County Sheriff's Office 6th Annual Community Fall Festival. This will take place October 26, 2024. Location is 3201 West Roosevelt Road, Little Rock, Arkansas, 72204. It will last from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. For more information, call 501-340-6613. Inclement weather alternative date is November 2nd, 2024. The Arkansas Claims Commission will hold hearings on November 7th, 2024, beginning at 9 a.m. The hearings will take place in person at the Commission's office. If there are questions, please contact the Commission office at 501-682-1619. And those are our announcements for this morning. Do you have any announcements, Denise?
The only announcement that I want to make right now, if you're going to let me talk about voting at the end of the show, like I asked, but the only announcement I have right now is if you remember Tim is one of our regular listeners. We went to Sweet Home to play dominoes with him and his father and the fireman. I think the other person was a fireman. Hotep, I see you on here. Anyway, his father made his transition, died on October 18th. And so I just wanted to pause for just a moment so that we could sit with Tim and his family and just hold them in this space as we remember his father. Even those of you who did not meet him, we made him come alive through our story. So I just want to pause for a moment for Tim and his family. Okay, thank you.
So this morning, we know early voting started. We know that the election, this is, for lack of a better term, this has been a crazy, weird, insightful election cycle. Not only at the top of the ticket with president and vice president, the offices of president and vice president, but also with the down ballots. And it's like every day I'm getting information in from candidates who I didn't even know were running, but never heard of them, but I'm getting this information in these flyers. Well, and what I want to do is just have a conversation this morning. I was talking to our guest the other day, and we were just having this broad conversation, not only about the election, not only about veterans, but also just about a lot of things in general that topics that have been brought up on the show before. And I thought it would be great just to have a conversation with bringing in another perspective on some things. And so, once again, Miss Katrina, who is, she's repping the Chicago Bears this morning. She is from Chicago. I think she West Side.
West Inglewood.
Yeah, she West Side. I'm South Side. So,
No, I'm Southside.
You Southside?
Southside Inglewood.
Okay. But it's just good to have her in studio this morning. And so, just want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, tell our listeners a little about yourself. And,
All right, I'll start off. I'm Katrina White, knowing Mr. Toney through American Legion, so it's always good to find balance in friendship. Yeah, we represent home, but we also have other things in common, being soldiers of like mind. And as he said, the conversations we've had just over the two phone calls have been enlightening. And I personally like speaking with someone that, I don't know what word you like, lifts the spirit and makes you want to keep doing this.
And one of the conversations that we were having, one of the topics that we were talking about, just really, really resonated with me. And it's something that I think a lot of people, especially Black people, have been struggling with for so long. And it's the topic of respect. Respect for themselves, respect for so many other things. And then when you look at what's going on with this election cycle, and you can see the blatant disrespect of people of color, and especially Black people. Can you just tell our audience, your perspective?
Absolutely. If you had to put them on a scale together, love and respect. Absolutely, love would weigh more. But love does not cover down on respect. Respect is one of those things that carries its own weight. Love is an action, so is respect. You have to give respect per what is due for either the conversation you're having or the person you're engaging. Right now, I'm tightly knitted with Generation Z. As a Generation Xer, I tightly knit with Generation Z as I've raised them. And I'm listening from the Generation Z perspective. There is no respect on being an adult. There is, I'll respect you if I see the need for respect. And we as the parents of them, the aunties of them, the cousins of them, we're not listening. We're not listening. We're taking it as what we've been told. You do what I tell you to do until I stop telling you, and then after that, you make your decisions. Unfortunately, they're not bound by those same rules. They are, my mom told me, give respect where it's due. So because that's the limitations on their understanding, when they go outside the mom's door, the respect is limited. It is how you approach them. It is how they resonate with you. And we're not giving it. They don't have the same respect that we have for everyday life. We get up and go to work happily. We get up and go to work knowing that work is what's going to pay the bills, work is what's going to get us through the month. And they go to work with, I just need my money because I'm not trying to pay bills. I'm not resonating with the lifestyle that you all have. They actually believe when they leave your house that they should be able to live the lifestyle that you live already, that it took you 30 and 40 years to accumulate. And we have a disconnect. We have a very large disconnect because no one is listening to see what is it going to take to fix this. Because as they have children, the respect kind of dissolves down the line. As Generation Z begins to have children, they are automatically, the babies are automatically coming here with the plantation of, I don't have to, I don't want to. And they speak that. They don't just not do it, they speak that. I come from a generation where you didn't speak unless you were told to speak. My children, I taught them you speak and you speak appropriately when you're engaged in a conversation. But when they came home, they learned something different. They speak the way they want to speak to hold themselves down. And you have to kind of deal with that. It's not, I sent you out here with respect, but you come back home and you tell me that there's a lack of respect in the world and you're bringing it home to me. So that's where we are. We teach it, but when we send them out here into these classrooms with other personalities and people teaching them, they come home with what the world has taught them, and we're not listening. We're not listening.
And so, how do we overcome it? How do we? Because I know there are systems in place. There are things that are happening that influences so much of what not only our children but our adults.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so what? How can we overcome that?
The overcome is self-preservation and self-respect. If we don't get that out the door, then they go out with the intentions of they have it all, and they don't. They don't have the tools that they need to rock it off with. They don't have the tools they need to pop their collars with, because we've only given them the basics, and that is what goes on in my house is what you do. When they leave your house, they're going into somebody else's house, and unfortunately, they're going into 16 to 18 other houses at one time when they sit in a classroom. When they out here listening to music and entertaining their friends, hosting their friends, they're getting every aspect of what we've not powered them to. The first thing in my household was, if there's something you are faced with and you don't know how to give a decline, blame me. Tell them my mom is on her way, or my mom is not going to appreciate that. You can use me as the excuse, because a lot of times they don't have the resources to say I don't want to, because the friends have the power to influence. But if you have respect for the mom and dad in the home, it's kind of like, I don't think my mom would agree with that. Or I don't think, if they don't have that sitting in the back of their head when they make a move outside the door, they're not armed with what they need. I understand that, there are obstacles that they will incur. But in those obstacles, did you give them the tools that they need to think for self? Did you give them the tools that they need to preserve themselves? And some of the tools is the power to say no. No is not a popular answer. But if your child is strong enough, or even your preteens are strong enough to use the word no, because honestly, they come home and say no. So if you can come home and say no, then you definitely can use the word no in a situation where you have the power to make a change.
Here's a question from Lo. You mentioned the school. So he asks, why are we allowing the enemy to teach our children to include values and culture? Why are we allowing the enemy to teach our children to include values and culture?
We bought that. We bought that, and unfortunately, history has told us that our knowledge is in a book. And the only way we can get the information from the book is to go to the collective that have the information and share it. If we don't have our own book in home, then what book do they bring to the table when they go and sit and read somebody else's book? We're collectively all a book. I spoke to you before. When I did book reports, everything I needed to know was in an encyclopedia. Every achievement, every dead person, everybody that needed to have a say was collectively in an encyclopedia. And that's how we researched us, the illustration of us. But now that all of the information is there, all of the information has been spread, we're ciphering out just the bits and pieces that resonate with us. We should not only be teaching them the minimal of who got us here, but the exploratory portions of why do we need to be here? Why do we need to share? Why are we still here? Why are we still asking questions about us? We have enough feet on the ground and enough history behind us that we should be able to tap into who we are and where we came from. There should not be an illustration of us unless we go into our home Bibles and getting all the obituaries out to make our own home encyclopedia of what we've achieved, who did what, and the footsteps that we should be following.
Yeah, and let me do this real quick. Phone lines are open 501-433-0088. 501-433-0088. Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point because in this system that is trying to take away information about who you are, where you come from, the power of who you are, and the system that's trying to take that away and then forcing you to go and find information through another system. And the more you know about your ancestry, the more you know about your history, then it really impacts you in how you go forward. Going back to the respect, if you can see your history or understand your history and respect your history, then I believe it can help you respect yourself and respect things where you are.
Absolutely. And so when we go back to history, all of our history is illustrated until you get into the homes. And I'll stay inside the homes because right now we're personalized. We're on the radio, and each person is an individual as we speak. But collectively, when you look at who we are, everything we know about our past is something that was written and given to us in a book. We don't know this much about our own families, and we should be able to track at a minimum 5 generations, but we can't. We have no knowledge of, our ancestors. The only time you hear the general consensus of us speaking about ancestry is when we speak, the ancestors. It's something new to them. It's almost a new culture to them. But this is something that we should have had long ago. We should have always known our great-grandmothers. We should have known the stories and the legacies of our great-grandparents, but we don't. We don't know us. We know our parents. We know our aunts. We know our cousins. It's almost like every generation we're starting over.
And you're right. And I want to shift for a second.
Well, before you shift, let me get this question. There's a question also on the, this is from Lo again. It says, not all, well, it's not a question. It says, not all is in a book. The oral history of our of our elders seems to be minimized by our own culture. And so I just want to make sure that we say, in case you have a response to that, Ms. Katrina.
The response is the oral history is diluted with, I have to choose and order my words correctly. Our history is diluted with the age of parenting. We've allowed the teen parenting to become so normal that the education of a parent is that it's minimal. When you're 14 and 15 years old and you're giving life, your life has not even started. So you don't concern yourself with the life that was before you, i.e. the mother, the grandmother, because the respect of self, the respect of person is not there. And somehow it missed. But we continue that curse with allowing the degradation of parenthood become monetary. You want to degrade our culture by taking away our knowledge. Parenting is one of the most wisest jobs that we as a people have. You pass wisdom down to your children by the way you raise them. They see how mom gets up and go to work. They see mom washing dishes. They see dad going to work. If they don't see it, they can't. That's the first things of mimicking. You mimic what you see. When you go to kindergarten, the first thing they do is teach you how to play house. So if you playing house in kindergarten and they're instructing you how house should go, then your house is obsolete. What do you see in your house that's more important or more informative of the house you played when you were in school?
There's another statement that says to be ignorant of history is to remain a child.
Absolutely.
That's what Hotep says. But I have a question for, well, I just want to say something because when you first started talking, you said something about respect and you were talking about children, you're talking about in the home, and you said a child, this is what I heard. Maybe this is not what you said, but this is what I heard, that a child should not speak unless they are told to speak. You speak when I tell you to speak.
No, I said that's the generation I came from.
Oh, okay.
That's
so
the generation I come from.
Okay, but that's
Correct.
not how you operate now.
I don't, because there are some things that can't be introduced when I want it to be introduced. I may say something and it will trigger a conversation for my granddaughter, and they're young, they're 4 and 5. So if they can't speak freely, holding their tongue is almost like making them forget it happened or telling them it's not important that it happened. So it's not a speak when you're spoken to for this generation. Even with my daughter, I tried that. I did. I tried to repeat that history, but my daughter, she's 26 now. She wasn't having it. She was more of, but I need to talk to you. And if I can't talk to you, then I'm gonna find somebody to talk to. So no, that doesn't work for us. Speak when spoken to. They need to speak and be able to speak vulnerably is the word I'm going to choose. They need to have a place to be vulnerable with their conversation, because not being able to express yourselves in school because you're suppressed by all that is around you. Home should be freedom. Home should be peace.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that has entrapped, especially Black people. One of the things that entrapped them is that idea of tradition. Mama did this, daddy did this, so that means I should do this. And and to push back against it, would make certain parents think, look at it as disrespect. And then you throw in this system and people, you growing up in Chicago, me growing up in Chicago, during our time, it was projects. You had projects everywhere. Right. Even though those projects, mentality is still there, you could actually see the projects. And one of the things that would happen in the projects is that you would have these 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old young girls. And a lot of people don't realize that in Chicago, men could get general assistance. If you were 15 and 16, you can get general assistance, so you could get a check also. And so when this money was made available, and you're living in poverty, you're living in a system where you don't have enough, and all of a sudden, this as one of my cousins said many years ago when we were still teenagers, this pot of gold, which was the check. This pot of gold was there, and now you want to get that pot of gold, and they said, okay, you can have this, but this is what you're going to have to strip away. You want to strip away family. You got to strip away a balance in the house. You have to strip away the respect of other people so that you can have this money. And we bought it. A lot of people bought it hook, line, and sinker, which started this whole generation. Going back to what you were saying, is that lack of wisdom, because at 14 and 15, and and I knew, even in my family, there were I had relatives, had cousins that by the time they hit 18, they had 5 children. And
Because
you're
the
like,
bigger the family, the more money.
yeah, and you don't even know how to raise a child, but you're trying to.
What? So we'll tap into both of those. And it doesn't come from us, it comes from conditioning. Our parents and our grandparents were conditioned through control. It comes down from the hand of the master. Control them, and you control the mass. So when you have a mentality of people that only wants peace in their life, they're not looking for peace anywhere else, just a snippet of peace in their life, and you offer them the opportunity to get it for free, then you override everything that they thought, and they become everything that you predicted, i.e., you introduce welfare. Okay, I'll give you welfare if you exclude the father. Now we have welfare, and you can have as many children as you want. We're going to continue to pay for them. So a trend has followed. Oh, my mama was on welfare. It didn't do her bad, but I'm gonna go and I'm gonna have babies. I'm gonna have babies by 4, 5 people, and I'm gonna get me some checks and some child support, whatever it is we deem our paycheck. That is conditioning. That is not something that we taught our children. It's a mindset. It's a mindset of watching how easy it was for this class of people, how hard it was for those. And like I said, if your eyes are only seeing what is going on in your household, then you're conditioned from the house going out. If you don't have a spirit that says, I want more for me, then there's no dream. There's only a future. Futures and dreams are not the same. A future, your path is directed with whatever it is, but a dream, you have to think outside of what you see and look for more.
And it's so interesting that you brought that up, because one of the conversations we were having the other day was about our military experience, and we both had ended up in the same place.
Correct.
And it was so interesting what you said, that going back to the conditioning and the choosing. When you said that, hey, it came a point where I was losing my children, and I had to make a decision. Do I want to stay in this military career, or are my children more important? Because being in the military, the first thing they tell you,
we didn't issue you a family.
Yes, they taught this family-oriented atmosphere, but in reality, to the family is almost like baggage.
So that means we are the rubber that met the road, and so to speak. You can tell me that I'm geared for a family, but you can also let me know I'm not prepared for what you need me for if I should go desire this family. I'm not prepared if I don't have a family care plan. But in my understanding as a parent, it wasn't anybody else's responsibility but mine. And you made me sign paperwork to tell somebody else it's their responsibility when the Army needs me. Well, it just didn't make sense to me. It never made sense to me. I've done some things in the military that I always wondered, what was the purpose of that? You made me put my children in daycare while I went and babysat somebody that had an Article 15. You took his money, didn't give me any money, but I'm sitting here babysitting. It was just a lot of things that were taken away from the family, just taken away. You would take me as a single parent, and technically I wasn't single, but you would take me as a single parent and ostracize me in all these events to make my coworkers dislike me. But then you would also tell me I still had the same responsibilities as them. It tore me in a lot of different places because, yes, I wanted to make sure that my children had all the advantages that the other military children had, but I didn't have two parents in the household. The other one was deployed. And I always say when you have two parents in the house and one is gone, you're geographically single. You still, this work still got to get done. So as two military parents, my children were always lacking a parent. I was either gone over here or he was gone over there, or there was somewhere where there was never two parents in the household. And we still had to have paperwork through the government that said we hand our children over to them when we go fight for you.
Yeah, and then when you look at this, one of the biggest issues that's being discussed during this election cycle, but really for years, what had been discussed is the right of women to have control over their bodies, to have the right to choose and the right to be able to decide. And a lot of times, sometimes the military is a microcosm of society because that same control is like, yes, you can have a baby, you can get pregnant, but we want to control the pregnancy, want to control the what happens, and even to the point, we want to control your reproductive. We want you to have the baby when we want you to have the baby. Let me take this call.
I kind of struggled for this tonight, but of course it's eternity with its conjuring of the ocean and its advertising alias in itself, not to mention its name, eternity, of course. I couldn't pick a better name for this.
Sorry about that. I forgot to turn the AD down, so when it kicked in, sorry about that. I was wondering, like, what's going on? And I realized that I've been turning the knob down. My apologies to the listening audience. Yes, so it can be a microcosm of what's going on in this society where, because it's a male-dominated society, that men feel like we should have the control over everything, including women's bodies. Let me take this call real quick. Caller, you on there? You on there?
One thing I was looking for is this how the CIA and our government introduce drugs to our community. From the heroin, the world that we were talking about, and bringing the hard working into the community and really just bringing out most of our working for working good. I mean, from the time things going for automobile trucks and all these things that look like working crowds now, but were working constructed and producing. But CIA and our government had a right to supervise their mind. And that's what I want to get for and really talk about that real quick. You go up.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so usually when I listen to, and I'm a great listener, when I listen to what someone says, even though I didn't understand everything he said, the context of what I got is what we missed was the drugs that came into our neighborhoods, our communities, and our families, and how they touched us. And what we take for granted is how smart the enemy is. Drugs was the first sign of gentrification for us. Drugs was the first thing that they introduced to us to take our souls from our minds. We go to different places when we're on drugs. So therefore, nothing else becomes important other than getting back to that place. You had a whole generation of children born during crack, millennials. And all those babies came to school when it was their time to get into school. And they had the passage of, I didn't take my medicine. My mom said I didn't have to take my medicine. And that put a bad taste in the educator's mouth. But it was a win for us. We didn't take it as a win, but that was a win for us. That should have been the first sign that these people don't have our best interest at heart. You put this out here, you made this a lifestyle, and now if you can't deal with it medically, you don't want to deal with it at all. Drugs are not there's no contraceptive drug for the life that these children were born into. You had millennials born from crack, from heroin, from every obstacle that you can think of during the gentrification period. Because all of those neighborhoods that had that going on, if you go back to those neighborhoods right now, they're like ghost towns. And those children of that ghost town are the ones that are just barely hanging on, trying to make sense of what we have right now. What we have right now is pretty much what's left. We don't have generational inheritance coming our way. We don't have any of that. When we decided that that was going to be a priority, it was too late. These babies were losing houses that grandparents had. Most of the places that you went to became crack dens or some sort of eyesore that even the ones that could help would not come back because they were on the other side of the good times. They were now the Jeffersons. My generation is the Jeffersons. The generation before me is good times. And we're so out of sync that we don't even understand that coming from where we are, i.e., Mr. Toney is 10 years my senior. And just with listening to him talk, there's such a distortion on what I knew or thought I knew about home or Chicago that just listening to him helped me to understand my father. My father came from Mississippi, but he lived in Chicago. It helps me to understand that gap because everybody had a dream that they were chasing. Nobody had a future. We were never promised a future. We were promised a dream, starting with civil rights. That was the dream. So if you give them something to dream for, you don't have to provide them a future. I don't see where we have a future here in America if we're the last ones to climb the ladder. You're bringing everybody that doesn't, these third world country people here, and you're stacking them on top of us. We haven't solved our problems yet. We haven't solved our demise yet. So how do you take someone that doesn't have as minimal as we have and put them on top of us and make us a priority and we don't have anything to say? We're just in the bottom. It's almost like we're in the bottom of the boat and we're okay with being there. Where is the willpower to say we deserve more? Not we want more, we deserve more. We've built this country. We've done everything we could, and the only thing we get is a pile of ashes in the end. You gentrify us, you split us up, and we're right here together. But our emotions and our mindset is so different from every other race. It's almost as if we don't want to be together. We want to stay in chaos. We want to stay in misunderstanding so that we have an alibi to be who we are. And we're not those people. Might have been created to be those people on the outside, but we're not those people.
And I think that's part of the design. I think
absolutely
that's part of
because that's the systematic way. You can't have a system without having someone mechanize a process. Welfare was not designed for us. It was given to us as an alibi. Welfare was designed as an incentive to come here from Europe to get control of this land. That's what welfare was for. It wasn't until the 70s when we deemed it okay for our children to have babies out of wedlock. And then now you can hand them this stimulus that they call welfare. Keep on having them babies. Keep on not being married. Keep on not needing those men. Because predominantly, if it's not for, what do you want to call it? a lack of need, we wouldn't have men. The women act like they don't need men. Right now, it is so okay to not need a man that the man's value in political society is of no use. A black man's value is of no use in political society right now. We can take him to church, but when you get done with church, if he don't have a job, then he's really nobody to society. He's a paycheck, but he is of no word of power. And we're okay with that. Dad don't have a word of power. Husband don't have a word of power. So what is the purpose of man? Go along and get along. And until we give black man, back his power, we sitting here, we doing the same thing everybody else doing.
Yeah.
Pulling the soul out of man. You just spirits running around here, just you put your hand on everything, trying to get something done to make a difference. But really, until we give you your power back, it doesn't make a difference.
And so Lo says that's one of the problems. It's the Willie Lynch syndrome.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You give them a mindset, and I've read that. You give them a mindset, and once you trap them in that mindset, they won't go any further. But like I said, that's the difference between a future and a dream. Are we teaching our children to go into the future, or are we teaching them to dream? And which one is more detrimental to us?
Well, I think part of it is the fact that when you start talking about a future in a dream, is who is defining what that future is and who is defining what that dream is. And part of the system is saying, I talk about this all the time about this idea of the American dream. So this dream and future that we're presenting to you has to look like this. It has to coincide with this. It has to be followed like this. Anything outside of that, then you're wrong. Anything outside of that, then you're radical. Anything outside of that, then you are a rebel. Because each individual should be able to decide, this is what my dream is. This is what my future looks like. But so many times we as a people, we sabotage our own dreams and future. Going back to what you were saying about your children, is that as parents, we have a dream and a future for our children. I want you to go to school. I want you to go to college. I want you to get married, or I want you to have children. That's the future. That's the dream I have for you, and I'm grooming you for that future, and I'm grooming you for that dream. But when you say that's not my future that I want to have, and that's not my dream I want to have, next thing you know, then you become this rebellious child. Then you become this disrespectful child, because you're not doing what I'm telling you to do. Instead of saying, if that's your dream, if that's your future, how can I help facilitate that with you? What can I do to help you grow and help you walk into this dream and future? And I think that's one of the things that happens, and I think I love what Dr. King said in his when he was speaking in Memphis the night before he died. And he said that, I've been to the promised land. And he said, I may not get there with you, but we'll get there as the people. And what I believe, just my opinion, what I believe he was saying was that, you know what, I've seen my future and I've seen my dream, and I know what it is, and you can get there also if you're willing to step out the box, you're willing to step out your traditions, you're willing to step away from what has been told you, and to believe that you can do this.
I feel like I need some clarification here, because you all are talking about the we, and I'm trying to figure out, are y'all talking about Black folks, are y'all talking about people who are from the quote unquote projects? Are you talking about people who are from the quote unquote ghetto? Are you talking about people who are from the quote unquote hood? Because I grew up Black and I don't have any recollection of anybody in my neighborhood who was having 4 and 5 children by the time they were 16, who were collecting checks, who were doing all of these things that you all are talking about, who said, okay, it's a win for me to get this check and to move this. Like, I did not grow up in that environment. I don't know those people. So when you say who, I feel like we need to clarify what this conversation is about and what it's sourced in, because what you're saying is not my life. And I don't want to normalize that behavior because we're on a global streaming platform. And I don't want anybody walking away from this thinking that what you all are drawing and painting a picture of is the whole of the Black community.
Not so much as a whole of a Black community. When I said there's a 10-year space between us, I'm not sure of all of what he saw growing up in Chicago. I know what I saw. I know in Chicago, my teenage years were not nearly compatible with my teenage years with my cousins in Mississippi. When I would go to Mississippi, life was so peaceful. Life was so easy. But to come back home in Chicago, we seen the trash. And I'm talking 80s, early 90s. We seen that I seen Chicago go from what I grew up in to somewhere I didn't want to visit or live permanently. I go to Mississippi now. Mississippi to me now looks like 1989 Chicago. So as I kind of travel and go places, the familiarity of what I see when I visit Chicago, when I visit Mississippi, or when I go back home to Texas, there's almost like 3 different worlds that I'm traveling in, and I'm not that old. What I see in places that had more than just the economical struggle, I seen growth. I never seen what I see in Texas, what I see in Chicago and where I come from, and Mississippi where I go to, I never seen it in Texas. So it's not that it's normalized, it's what I'm heightened to see in my people when I go back home to visit, what got normalized, what got overlooked, what didn't get done. It's hard for me sometimes to go to Chicago because my childhood in Chicago was great. But what I look at when I go back home to visit, I wouldn't take my children there because I'm afraid. I literally would not go back to Chicago to raise my children when I got out the military because I was afraid that they wouldn't last. I was afraid that they wouldn't even make it through school. So I kept them in Texas with and he used the word, when I say dreams is something that somebody can look forward to that nobody planted in their head. But my desire for my children was not the desire to go back to where I came from. My desire was to give them something to look forward to, because going back home, I had nothing to look forward to. Yeah, I could go to a job, not a career. I could go to a job and, and work and do it what everybody else is doing. But life just offered so much more when I left Chicago and went to Texas and began my journey as a young lady, as a woman. When I look at going home, I'm different.
Yeah, and one thing I want to say, so especially within the Black collective, the Black community, there are different lived experiences. Mm-hmm. There are different things, and so I talk a lot about living in the project Chicago, but having relatives in the suburbs, in the suburbs of Chicago, and so it would be different worlds when I would go from the projects when I would go to the suburbs. In the suburbs, my relatives that lived in the suburbs, they had a whole different mindset. They looked at things differently. And when where I lived in the projects, it was a different mindset. But the one thing that you can't take away is the fact that we're all as Black people operating under the same oppressive, controlling system. And so when I talk about dreams, when I talk about normalizing, when Denise talked about normalizing, You know, it's you know, you have to look at what people consider normal. And so you have these lived experiences that when you look at, you as a person will say, this is normal for me. When I would go to the projects, it would be abnormal to me. You know, I would look at things and say, this is abnormal. And it becomes so abnormal that it would cause division between me and my relatives, my cousins, because, you know, it would be like, you're better than me, you think you're better than me, you talk different than me. But when I go back to the projects, you know, I'm back in my normal. And so I think what we have to look at is that no matter whether we call it normal, abnormal, lived experience, or whatever, the one thing that remains the same is that there is a system that divides, that conquers and divides. There's a system that most black people are trying to live into that really does not work for their overall growth and for their overall advancement.
There was a comment that came in when you were talking about the American dream, and this is Lo asking the question, whose American dream? Because for Black folks, it's been a nightmare.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's the dream. And like I said earlier, here's this, you know, this is the idea of what you're supposed to do from the moment you, especially when you go into the education system. The minute you get in school, they start to paint this picture for you. This is how your dream is supposed to look. This is how your future is supposed to look. Well, once I step out that classroom, once I come out the classroom and I head back to whether it's the projects, whether it's suburbs, but I head back into my Black community, wherever that Black community is, and I look and I say, well, that doesn't, what you painted here does not equate here. But I have to try to fit in to get this picture. And I think that's one of the problems is that going back to something you said a minute ago, is that, you know, we talk about that other ethnic groups come to this country and they move up or they become this or they can have this. And we wonder why, well, how come it doesn't happen with Black folks? And you said it, is that they stack everybody else on top of us. Because at the bottom, that's where they want us. We're going to be the footstool for everybody else to get where they want to be. And if you don't want to be the footstool, then the only choice you have is to buy into this. You know, buy into this system, buy into what we consider American dream, and then you can prosper, be successful, or whatever you want to call it.
One of the first things I told my daughter when my granddaughter started school, and she was leery. She really didn't even want her to go to school. She wanted her to stay home. She was just like, I don't even know these people that's going to start massaging in my daughter's brain. But, you know, public society says I have to take her there, and I don't know how to prepare myself for it. And I was perplexed by that, seeing as though she's a young mom. She's young. She's 26 years old with a 5-year-old. So when she is saying to me, I don't want to send my daughter to school because...
Oh, you stopped because you were reading. The comment that came in from Deidre, I didn't have that Chicago experience. My dreams were always bigger than my surroundings. So again, I'm glad that you made the comment, Toney, because we have to be careful about how we paint pictures about a community that is not a monolith. And so everybody doesn't have the experience of being on welfare, knowing people that are on welfare, or being on the system, or generationally. That's not every Black person's experience. So we just want to make sure that we're really clear about that.
Right.
Correct.
And so, hey, it's 10 o'clock. Our time has flown by. Just want to thank Katrina for being here this morning. Really appreciate the conversation. And any last words you want to tell our listeners?
Keep your chin up. If you get your chin up, you don't have time to look down and see what's falling. Keep your chin up. You already see it coming.
Okay. Denise? Okay. Hey, thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day. And Peace out and continue listening to KABF 88.3 FM.
What part of Mississippi?
Jackson,
Where's that?
Jackson,
Jackson, Hattiesburg.
oh, that's not far.